Okay, so today, because we're about to head into a really complex, complicated discussion on metabolism and energy fueling, which ties into kind of health in terms of food intake, health and food of stress again, how our bodies adapt to stress and fight or flight, how that impacts how we consume food, what changes about our digestion, what changes about our entire metabolism and our fueling mechanism. So before we go into that, I want to go first into how we cognitively change with how we relate to food when our source or access to food is perceived as threatened. Okay. So keep in mind, perception does not mean it's real. It doesn't mean it's true. It just means that we're seeing potential threat. We can forecast maybe that there could be a problem. That alone is all the brain and central nervous system needs for a lot of this stuff to change, for how we relate to food to change. So you can just perceive something as dangerous and you biologically are going to have a reaction because your brain doesn't know, oh, this person's feeling insecure, or this person might be using food to cope with something else that's really difficult in their life. They might be trying to clutch onto something like a physiological need, more so because their belonging might be threatened. The brain doesn't freaking care. Like our primal wiring doesn't give a shit about reality. It just takes anything you perceive as fact and it responds. Okay. It's an amazing system. But it's not going to sit back and go, oh, they're irrational. They're kind of blowing this out of proportion. I'm really, this isn't that dangerous. Your brain says, no, if it's perceived, it's real, I will respond. Equal oppositely. Does that make sense? So we're going to, again, I'm going to go over the hierarchy of food needs. This research was done by a dietitian researcher, and she worked with families with children and adults that had disordered eating and eating disorders and different types of feeding issues. Um, and so her name is Ellen Satter. This is often called the Satter's hierarchy of needs. And she kind of looked at this through Maslow's lens hierarchically, how this physiological need, how our cognitive state changes specific to food. So do any of you remember? I think I listed 5 needs for food. So does anybody remember? Let's go ahead and label this out. I want to make sure this is seen in the video. When you think about, I'm going to put 6 down here. When you think about your relationship with food today, just today, when you woke up, what do you think the most important part of our relationship with food today is? Bam! Do I have any? Does it even exist? Is it even can I even get it? Do I have food? You need to remember this. There will be a quiz. Okay. Do you have it? Is there any? So access. Think of it as, do you have access to it? Okay. What else? What do you think is next?
How much is there? How long is it going to last?
Very good. How much is there? Do I have enough? Right? Because we have to quantify our day. I may have this protein shake, right? Which is a highly processed, palatable food. They're not all bad, right? But do I have some? And is it going to get me through the day? Right? How much hunger, how much physical pain? What am I doing? What's my activity? What's my plan? So we're kind of taking this into account around schedule, access, quantity. So she's right. You nailed it. Do I have enough? And I want you to remember, this isn't solely just you. These thoughts can include your family members, right? If you are a provider, if you're providing for your family, can I provide food today? Can I provide enough for everybody? Right? It's not just, do I have enough? It really does include your belonging, right? But it might be simpler for you to think in terms of yourself. Okay. What else? Do I have access? Is it enough? And then what? Someone else, hold on, just hold on. I'll come back to you. I want to see if anybody else remembers. Yeah. The idea that you can recycle, that is there a way for me to get more? Because you may have enough now. You may have it now. It may be enough for now, but we got to be able to restock, right? Can I get more? Is there enough in my future? So we go forward further. So this is why you might be thinking, how much do I have on my BSU card? And some of you might be budgeting. How much can I afford when I go to the grocery store? What can I afford today? Right? How you might be allocating a specific amount of money towards food because you're thinking in terms of longevity, right? Can I get more? When do I have my funds? When do I get paid? Right? When is the sub open? When does it close? Right? How often do you guys think of that? Right? Where, how much do I have in my pantry? When am I going to need to go shopping again? Something as simple as that is super primal, and we just live in it, and we don't realize how important these little things and how we relate to food really matter survival wise. Okay. Do I have enough? Can I get more? Right. So this is like restocking, storage, reaccumulation. Okay. And these kind of go together, right? You can see, like, do I have it? Do I have enough? Can I get more? And how these things just, do I have it? Can I get more? Is it enough? Okay. So then what do you think 4 is about?
Is it safe to eat?
Yes. Are you guys cheating or did you just listen?
This is from my notes.
Okay. Is it safe? Is it going to hurt me? I want you guys to think just in today, if you had a thought around, is it good or bad food? How many of you had a thought? That's bad for me. That's good for me. I shouldn't eat that. That's not healthy. How many of you had those thoughts today? I know most of you did, right? What should I be eating? What's the nutrition? What's the label say, right? That is super primal. That is so hardwired into and it can be shaped and shifted based on perception, right? I perceive this to be safe. Do you think that that changes your biological reaction to the food while you eat it? Just consider that. If you think, just thinking it's safe, that changes your physiological reaction. Now, what happens if you believe or perceive something is bad? What do you think that does biologically before you even put it in your mouth? You think that has an impact? How many of you guys have eaten something and felt bad about it? I shouldn't have done that. Thank you for being honest. Raise your hand. We've all done it on some level, right? I've done wrong. I shouldn't have done that. How did that feel biologically? And what was the probability that you binge ate while you had those feelings? Probability is really freaking high. The research shows that when you're feeling bad about a food that you are eating, you don't chew as much, you take bigger bites, you shove it down, chances are you're going to eat the whole thing. In part because you're trying to hide and get away from, or to remove the food that you think is bad, and then you're probably convincing yourself you won't do it again. But this primal part of us that is kind of hardwired, it's a healthy mechanism, is really meant for, is that berry poisonous? Am I going to get sick immediately? Right? Is my child going to have an anaphylactic shock? Is it going to make me sick? Right? Those were big things. Is that water clean? Because our food and our water can directly cause physical harm and death, right? Now, how much of our food intake today is like eating a poisonous berry? It is super rare, right? Of course, there are allergies. People have allergies and they get physical harm, right? But the probability that you're going to have some like devastating disease because of all of our food safety measures is really low, right? So a lot of our primal brain, though, hasn't adapted to our current food situation, right? It hasn't. It has not adapted. And the food, we could argue, and our food supply has diminished in nutrition. It's diminished in a lot of different ways, but is it toxic? Is it actually toxic? Well, yeah, I mean, you could argue with the forever chemicals that are allowed to be in our food and our water supply. Yeah, it is. However, take that aside, generally it's really freaking safe, right? It's safe. At least you hope so. You hope that, people are following some of the regulations that need to be out there for our public safety with food, right? But doesn't it make you feel better to know that you're probably not going to get salmonella when you eat at the cafeteria? I mean, you ever think about that? You're not getting salmonella. That's because it's been prepared and it's got regulations around how it's stored temperature, how long, how old, how it's prepped, right? People wash their hands. So a lot of these mechanisms we've kind of been privileged to not have to experience. But this danger, is it safe? The safety of food is one of those things we're not getting rid of. We need to have it. But you have to recognize how much of our primal mind might be getting distorted by an industry, by an entire system making trillions of dollars telling you that all food is dangerous except the food they sell you, or except the food they tell you you can and cannot eat, and how that impacts our psyche, right? How many of you have seen, whether it's on Instagram or whether it's on TikTok, and you're following some wellness influencer, has no education, but they have all these supplements they're selling and they look fucking cute or whatever it is, or they're yoked, and they're telling you about 5 toxic things you should always get rid of because your face is going to blow up and you're going to end up with like your butthole falling out, whatever it is that they're going to shame you and fear you with that's irrational, but you remember it. It's like sears into your freaking brain that sugar's killing you, even though we have amylase that breaks it down in our mouth, an enzyme over thousands and thousands of years that are meant to actually break down sugar. So maybe we were meant to have fruits and vegetables, right? So just how that industry makes a ton of money, a ton, we're talking trillions on triggering this one right here. Because you're going to be willing, you're going to be vulnerable, because we're all vulnerable to it, to include myself, to worry about, is it safe, right? And there's legitimate reasons why we need regulations on our food supply and why the food industry should be held accountable. That includes the supplement industry. Okay. God, I went off on that one. Okay, so the next one, access. Do I have enough? Can I get more? Is it safe to eat? Now, where are we going with these two?
Does it taste good?
Can I get high? That's what that is. Taste, flavor. Does it taste good? What do you think that's doing? Woo! That hedonic area of the brain lights up. It's supposed to. That's actually a super healthy response to food. If the food you're eating is bland, doesn't have crunch, doesn't have taste, doesn't have pleasure, isn't delightful, you don't digest very well. the pleasure center of the brain actually is very important to the initiation of digestion. We talked about Pavlov and his dogs, right? He was studying this type of physiology. It wasn't just him, it was also another renowned scientist who were the founders of this fight or flight physiology, but very specifically the pleasure center of the brain and how we respond to food. And they found that just the anticipation of pleasure and connected to food stimulates salivation. Your mind, your thinking, the mouth is responding immediately to that anticipation. And what do you think the mouth watering is? That's the release of amylase, a sugar breaking down enzyme. It breaks down carbs. That's the whole point of the mouth, is to start the digestive process. And pleasure is what does that. What they also found is fear and anger shuts it off. You're not meant to actually consume food when you're in fear, anxiety, and anger and rage. You're just not. It shuts it down for hours, right? So the pleasure, does it taste good? Is it pleasurable? Is super important for digestion. It's super important for the feelings of surviving, okay? When you eat, remember, food is physiologically in that foundation of our survival. And the access to it and having enough and having it safe, immediately reduces that central nervous system, that sympathetic worry. Where is it? Can I get more? Is it enough? Is it safe? How do I control? How do I think? That fixation on it. And when we have food that's pleasurable, in a way, it's like the brain center is saying, oh, you're safe. You're safe. There is a safety component to pleasure, and it allows that whole parasympathetic nervous system, which is your relax and digest and your secure survival system, right? Where your survival is secure. It works wonderfully, right? So when you consider the importance of pleasure, I want you to think about its importance in not just telling the brain that you are safe, but it's also telling the brain that you can relax. You're safe and can relax. Those are two really important things for digestion. Okay. Does it taste good? Now, what is number 6? Someone who has not answered, please answer. It's going to get real awkward because I'm going to keep my mouth shut till someone makes a guess. Anybody? Anybody? Okay, who's answered and knows? Go ahead.
It's like shared experience with food and it's connected.
Yeah. Dr. Satter, Ellen Satter, who created this, the way she described it is it's novelty. These are novelty foods. So it is belonging with food. It's shared belonging. It's the shared experience around connecting with people, feeling connected to family, to your community, to your culture. These are really important. You can think of it as conditioning through culture, through your tribe, through the meanings that we have through food that are directly tied to belonging. So we would say this is novelty, but it can also just be belonging that is given through shared food. So when we go back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs and we think about, again, that wraparound between the physiological, environmental, and how belonging is very much so secured or secures access to food and shelter and environment. how food has become incredibly biologically important for belonging. That when we actually break bread, when we actually share with each other, that is a symbol of survival. That's a symbol of bonding and connection. So when we say, hey, let's go have brunch, or it's your birthday, let's go have dinner together. That's what you're doing. You're surviving. You're actually giving each other this relaxing, oxytocin, dopamine filled connection through safety with access to food. You're not getting rid of that. This is, again, I love to use the word primal because we're hardwired to be this way. That when, let's just say you grew up, let's just say when you grew up, the family meal on Friday nights was pizza or tacos, right? And y'all ate together and you had memories and it was something you did maybe after, a sporting event, or it was just what you did. You went to dinner or whatever. And that became something that was novelty. Okay. What happens when that stops? Just put yourself in those shoes. What does it feel like?
That part of that pleasure that you get down, and then you end up in the response.
Yeah. And you end up missing, right? You end up feeling loss. Oh, I miss that. I miss that shared time. I miss that shared experience. So let's just say you did have family taco night. How many of you guys had family taco night? Family sushi night? Family pizza night? I mean, just put it all together. Exactly. Imagine you're on a diet and you can't now. Nope. It's bad for you. Can't eat it. How that feels in that environment with these people. What do you guys think? Any of you experienced that? Have you ever tried to restrict in an environment where normally it's a shared experience and your diet given to you by some business does not allow for that? It's deemed a bad food. How does that feel?
Um, no, it's not fun. But I think it brings like a lot of emotion because like what we explained earlier, how like this fat society like praises it too. Like it also felt good, like feel like when I was like around friends or something, it's like, oh, like, look at me, I'm doing something. And so like it brings on like a lot. But like if you're around family, I felt like horrible. It was like I'm missing out or something.
Yeah, you're describing the belonging part of it, right? That missing out. I also love that you brought up this idea that I'm doing something cool. I'm sacrificing something for my health. Is that what you were meaning by that?
Sacrificing something, but like just blinded by the fact that's like that's not a good sacrifice.
Well, because it ultimately ends up with feeling somewhat disconnected. Anybody else have a similar experience like that? I'll tell you something that I used to do. I have very vivid memories. I'm number 9 of 10 children, and we were very close in age. My parents had 10 children in 12 and a half years. And so we were all very close, and we're all still very close today. And I love saying we're all still alive, which is honestly kind of amazing. Um, And so, but I remember because I was one of the youngest, you kind of don't get the same quality time. I never got the same quality time with my father for sure because he was busy, but my mother was juggling a lot. And when my brother above me started going to school, I got to do a lot with my mom, and she would buy me a pack of Rolos. Do you know how special that felt to me? Again, this is like a real thing. I still feel it today. I'm like, oh my God, she left me. It was like one of those things. I'm almost gonna cry. What the hell? Like I never would have thought that there's a feeling still here with this. Anyways, when I was in the throes of my eating disorder, what do you think I binged on? Rolos. I did. And I would also, because I withheld myself. I wasn't allowed them. And it wasn't because of her so much as it was the demonizing of sugar, the demonizing of bad food. That this concept, remember, it was a concept given to me by some radical diet industry, said you can't have this or that. Those are bad now. So what was my safety took me away from my pleasure and my access to just enjoying food with my teammates. And I couldn't just go and have pizza with my teammates anymore. And it kind of removed me because pizza was bad. So my safety part of my brain had excluded me from all of those things that actually had meaning for me and history and importance, right? And so the moment I had one Rolo, it was like I fucked everything up. I ruined everything. I might as well eat the whole thing because I'm going to puke it up, right? And then that becomes this thing. And I'm not alone, right? Because what'll happen in those moments. Now, my thing was extreme. I recognize the extreme um, part of my story, but generally, everybody can, to some degree, say, I have experienced something like that. Maybe it wasn't puking on Rolo or puking up a bunch of Rolos, but it was like, I'm trying to do something for my health, and someone told me it was unsafe, but I didn't realize it was super disconnecting from these things. And not only that, but it took away my thoughts of access. It took away that I didn't have enough. I couldn't have more than one bite. And I can't get more because it's bad and I shouldn't eat it and I'll never do it again, right? That this is all getting all jumbled up. That in the moment, you go out to dinner with your friends or with your family and you're feeling what he described, which is this disconnection, missing out. What do you think you're going to do in that moment? Just play it out. What do you think?
You're just gonna go for it.
Yes, but what starts to happen prior to you going for it?
Kitty?
You start to negotiate. Justification, rationalization. I deserve it. I exercised. So now you're toxically combining exercise into this situation. Like that should not even be involved. But now exercise just got involved in this tangled web of toxic thinking, right? Well, I exercised. Okay, so now you're about to overconsume something that you wouldn't have overconsumed otherwise. Because of these things, all feeling insecure, right? Something as simple as that. Emotional eating. What do you think that is? That's this. That's that whole process. And we all, at some point, will overeat and undereat and overeat. But this process of safety, the removal of pleasure and novelty is a very big deal, especially that fear of missing out, that feeling of deprivation. That has actually been studied. Feeling deprived. I want you to consider that feeling in yourself. Go to some time in your life where you have felt unfairly deprived. It could be your friends had more money, they had nicer clothes. It could be you were deprived of time from your parents or deprived of an opportunity that someone else might have gotten, but you didn't get that opportunity. How does it feel? Let's describe deprivation for a moment. How would you guys describe it? Let's just take a minute.
It makes you angry.
Anger, you have a nail on the head. Yeah, that's the first, that is a yes. By the book, what you just said. Yes.
Jealousy.
Jealous. Yep. Desire. That's like that. Jealousy, would you agree, is somewhat, there's an injustice around it? Yeah. Anger, injustice.
Oh, I agree, so.
Ooh, yes. Poor me. Poor me. I have been wrongly treated. How many of you have felt this way at some point with something? Even you can go back to say when I was little and my really good friend was playing with another friend, and then it was like, oh, they left me out. It's a human experience. We all have this. It's a human experience and it is predictable. Anger, injustice, jealousy. Yep. Feeling sorry for yourself. What happens when people are in that state? Go to your own experience of it. When you're feeling that way, are you just going to sit there? You're saying no. Why?
Right.
Yes. Yeah. You want to make it right. So you're more willing to fight right? You're more willing to fight. The research shows you're more willing to steal. You're more willing to gamble. You're more willing to be impulsive. The research shows with this specific psychosocial, because it is a social construct, it's a social experience is what you're having, because you're comparing, right? I'm comparing what they have to what I have. And when it comes to food, what do you think is the almost immediate reaction people have? What do you think the research shows over and over again? You're feeling deprived in relation to food. What are you going to do? Remember, anger, injustice, unfairness, feeling sorry for yourself. Yeah. Binge eating goes up. It's just like boom, boom. Very simple. What's really fascinating is that with the research, the theories around it is that, especially with these kind of like food resources, access to shelter, access to survival needs, when there is a feeling of injustice or unfairness, that the impulse for fast reward is immediate, the seeking for immediate reward is real. And the thought process is that if you're, in terms of the social interaction, the belonging part of the interaction, is that if we are socially feeling vulnerable, right, that our internal response is to support ourselves, to supply for ourselves, our needs. So if we are been ousted, right, othered, let's just say in terms of you can't have this food, but we can, you're more likely to binge eat. You're more likely to gamble. You're more likely to look at porn. You're more likely to scroll. You're more likely to do anything immediately to try to compensate. And that's what you were saying. You're going to try to make it up. You're going to try to make it right. You're going to try to create balance. So you're going to find some type of dopamine hit to try to feel better. And the other part about it is that feeling of being deprived evolutionarily, the way that it is looked at is as if it is a threat to your survival. It is an offense. It's an offense to your survival. It isn't simply there's famine and we all are restricted of food, right? That would be different when you think of food. It's not just that. It is some people have it all and you don't get any. That is an actual affront to your survival. It's an offense. And our wiring is to fight. It is to get what we need to survive. We are all wired this way. Every single one of us, me and you and every single person in here. If we feel deprived, that is an affront. That is an attack on our survival. And we are not wired to just be like, let it in and surrender. It's okay. We're not wired to do that. Now, that's usually a really good solution to surrender, to accept, right? Go through the cognitive distortions and allow things to just show up how they are. But our primal self wants to fight, and we're going to get what we want, and we're going to try to make it right. So when it comes to social engagement, this right here, this will take over, right? So when we move forward in our discussions around how we should be eating, okay, keep in mind that you need to keep this in your mind. Keep this in your mind around our primal wiring psychologically and socially. It's not just psychological wiring, it's psychosocial. How all of this is completely enmeshed with how we relate to food. It is not simply, do I have enough crackers to survive today? It is, well, everybody else has cheese. Why can't I have cheese with my crackers? Everybody who's celebrating, they're putting like olive tapenade on it. Why can't I have the olive tapenade? Does that make sense? Just like what it means to us, food is not just nutrition. Food is not simply metabolism. Food has meaning. It has meaning culturally. It has meaning completely connected to survival. And it is super important for our brain wiring to feel safe with food and to feel that we have connection and belonging and to feel that we can break bread and we can share and we can celebrate with food and that food is abundant, right? So I want you to practice this in your mind. I want you to imagine, and have we done this yet, the table of abundance? Have I had you guys envision the table of abundance yet? Okay. So in order for this to actually kind of work, you need to make it feel real. Okay. So it's not just the pretend game, even though it is pretend, but I need you to actually try this out for a moment. I want you guys to envision, okay, that you just won the lottery. Okay. And that can be a huge sum of hundreds of millions of dollars, or it can be you have this rich aunt that you didn't know about, a rich uncle, rich family member in another country that left an estate, a castle, a whole thing, like massive amounts of wealth. Okay, so let's start with that. How does that feel? Pretty good? Yes, it does. Yeah. And you are now in this new space and you are getting a tour of the new home. And this new home has this insane kitchen with like 8 chefs, 8 or more from all over the globe at your fingertips. And your dining room has this amazing grand table. And on that dining room is every type of food you can imagine. I always think of like the pictures of like the Vikings and the tables with the fruits and the vegetables and the meats and the hams and the cheeses and the pastries. And I mean, it is overflowing. It is, and it's going to be there for the rest of your life. How does that feel? Just try it out. Pretend for a moment as if that's real. How's that feel? I mean, we're talking everything and anything you can imagine is on this table. All the fruits from all over the world, every type of pastry, every type of, even just the cereal that you grew up with is on this table. White bread, sourdough bread, any type of taco you want, all the guacamole, the ceviche, the Italian food, the French cuisine, Japanese food, the sushi, oh my God, Indian food, holy shit, the naan, the coconut freaking naan, like, oh, hell yes. Every day for the rest of your life. Every day. Available to you, and it's available to your children and your children's children and all of your family. And when you go to that table and you pick something out and you eat it, it gets restocked immediately. Restocked. Okay, let's talk about how that feels. Is that really the first thing you just thought about? Okay, someone else answer. We're gonna talk about that later.
I'd say like insane and exciting.
Describe it. Insane and exciting. I love it.
First, over old, but then you would also get used to it, like it's just constantly there.
Yeah.
So that novelty of, oh, I need to have this, or
When I want to try it.
would go down.
Yeah.
Because you have everything accessible to you. You don't have to be like, oh, I can't get this today. You're always gonna have it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
It kind of takes away stress, like not as much as like if you already had it now or whatever, but then you just know like it's always gonna be there and you don't have to like think about what you're gonna do next or how you're gonna provide for your family.
How does that feel? Yes. What does that feel like to you?
Like it's like reassuring.
Calming? Yeah, like, oh my God, that's amazing. It's like that exciting feeling that you brought up. That, oh my God, it's exciting. And it is kind of like, oh wow, there is a calming. And I think you're describing that, right? That like, oh, it's always going to be there. Okay. Anybody else want to add to this?
It would be awesome, especially because it's free.
Yeah.
You just pack it. And there's no like worrying, like, do I have enough? Like, of course you have enough. Of course I can get more. These are awesome chefs, so of course it's safe to eat.
Yeah. It's safe to eat, pleasurable.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing. And it's interesting that you tied it to funds, right? That is true. It's true. Our finances impact this, right? And then when you take the finances out of as a condition, that it kind of changes how we feel about it, how we relate to that food. That's a great point. Anybody else? Anybody here feel grossed out? Like, oh, okay. How many of you are scared? A little bit. Is it tied to body image?
I think it would just be like self-discipline on like having to choose when to eat stuff that's actually gonna be nutritious for my body instead of just like always eating like the pastries or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and this is a common thought initially, right? Because you've probably been withholding yourself from pastries. So the first thing your mind is going to, and other people's minds probably go to is, well, all I'm going to do is indulge on those. But what happens if they're there every day, all day long? What happens to that indulgence? I think that's a valid point to sit through. I think it's really valid, that thought too. That's why I bring it up. The fear. How many of you fear, worry? Oh shit, how I'm going to be freaking huge. And it's like, well, sure, because you might be coming off of a diet right now. You will overindulge. But what happens the moment it really settles? Take yourself through the settling, and that's what you brought up. When it settles, it's not going anywhere. You can have a piece of pie every day. You can have 5 pieces of pie if that's all you want to eat. So what happens to that desire for pie when you know it's there all the time and it gets restocked? So what's the point of eating the whole thing thinking it's never that you're going to get rid of it? Well, guess what? 5 more pies show up. It changes everything. It kind of calms that fear. So the fear is a normal process. But when it's there, it what happens is it loses its power because you have enough, you can always get more. And so it stops being something that you have to hold on to, right? Because the mind, when these things are threatened, the mind latches on. It literally holds on to the fear of what it is that whatever it is that you're experiencing that's threatened in terms of food, and it magnifies it in your mind. Okay, so if you can't have carbs, what do you think you're going to think about all day? It gets bigger. It does the opposite of what you would think. The fact that you have to check for carbs, that you have to look for where they're at, actually makes your cravings go up. So the palatability and the desire for those foods increases, in part because you're trying to say you don't have enough. So it's no one actually looks at the restriction as the problem. No one, especially the people selling it to you. They don't consider that that's why you actually have a desire for more. They don't look at you as a whole human being that has this psychological and sociological enmeshment with food that you're not going to get rid of. You're not getting rid of it. You can't. It's impossible. It's impossible. So when you let it settle and you're like, I can have Rolos every day, anytime I want, all the time. I haven't done anything wrong. Nothing's been ruined. What do you think happens to my desire for Rolos? I actually don't like them. I literally don't freaking like Rolos. I don't like the caramel in my teeth. And plus, once you've thrown up a bunch of Rolos chewed up, it's a big wad of nasty ass. I love that you guys are cringing right now. I'm intending to do that. I will never forget what that looks like, to throw up a humongous wad of caramel after binging on Rolos. Okay? I'll have one out of the sake of like, oh, I miss my mom. I might do a little novelty when I feel like it, but I can have that Rolo anytime I want. I can have the whole pack and it sits out. So with my knowledge of this, how do you think I raised my children? I wish my son was here right now. Say what? Oh yeah, I have candy everywhere in my house. Everywhere. I have the most beautiful candy dishes because I like them displayed.
I also feel like when you over consume something and you have it all the time, your body just naturally doesn't like it anymore. I don't know how to explain it. It's
Yeah.
not like a why it shouldn't be like, oh, I'm not a fan of this anymore because I'm constantly having it.
Yeah, the flavor and taste. That's assuming you don't have any guilt, shame, or dialogue in the background.
Yeah.
If you remove guilt, shame, dialogue, and all the food morality, you're right. But a lot of people have food morality attached, and that distorts everything.
Right.
Like also with that kind of like how I feel like it would take away the special aspect of it. Like I would think about like after a soccer game or something, my dad would take me to go get ice cream or something. But then if I just like always have it, it's not like a special thing to me anymore, and I wouldn't want to like have it.
Yes, the novelty. Yeah, and you could anytime you wanted to. So the fact that you have the freedom to anytime you wanted to, and again, there isn't that moral dialogue around unsafety. It does change. You're secure. You have access to it. You can get more. It's safe. It's definitely pleasurable and novel. And you have all of these secure. So what happens in that when all of these things are secure is it becomes something that is craving. It actually becomes like an actual thing that, I'll describe what happens. So when I get hungry and I want to eat, I talk to my mouth. I talk to pleasure at first, immediately. What sounds good to me? And I just know it sounds, when I say ear, I'm thinking, oh, no, it's what would taste good? What's going to bring me the most delight? What food in this moment, given the freedom to choose, is going to create as much freaking dopamine and oxytocin, and I want to get as high as I can on whatever food I'm eating. So what is that? So I speak to my mouth. Sometimes it's like, oatmeal, peanut butter, I don't know. Peanut butter doesn't sound good. What about eggs? There's eggs with some sea salt. Ooh, that kind of sounds good. Maybe some like sourdough. I want the sourdough. I want it to be soury, and I want salty butter. Oh, now we're on. I'm high as a kite. Mouth is starting to water. I get excited. Okay. All of these are secure. Oh, sushi. Every so often there's something about sushi. Oh my God. There's something about sushi. And Indian food. How many of you guys like really good Indian food? There's nothing like it. And so I have a Rolodex. I am sitting at the table of abundance right now. Do you realize that you have access to anything you want in this country? Anything you want, given the funds. Given the funds. Sushi, Mexican food. You want to get a really good guacamole? I know you all know where there's good guacamole. You just thought of it. You're like, oh, they have the best guacamole. Okay, you're talking to the mouth. You're talking to that hedonic, addicted to food, pleasure center of the brain. And guess what? We're all addicted to food. Every single one of us. It's a good thing. It's a good thing we are. But when these things are insecure, oh, you're about to binge. You're about to go get it. And you're going to compensate. You're going to overconsume it. And then whoever told you about this is going to shame you into thinking that you must not have discipline. So maybe we should not have access even more. Maybe you should disconnect from the novelty. Maybe you should disconnect from pleasure. You can't handle it, right? So when you consider the table of abundance, we have that. We have the table of abundance. Every time I eat, it's not always exciting. It's not always something I'm craving. Sometimes it's just I need to get my blood sugar higher because I've been working in my yard for hours trying to re-landscape something, and I don't want to stop what I'm doing to go deal with food. Eating is a pain in the ass when you're busy. Anybody ever feel that way? Like, God damn, I'm hungry and I'd like to get this done. Let me just get it done. In that case, then you're just like, I'll just have a piece of bread or a bowl of cereal or convenience, right? Or I'll just drink this protein shake. It's convenient. It's like liquid food I don't have to think about. But you know what? Maybe when I eat again, I'm going to think about what sounds good to me. So I go to Trader Joe's or I go to Albertsons or I go to Fred Meyer or I go to Winco and I'm thinking, oh, what do I want to fix? I'm stalking to the pleasure center of my mouth the whole time. And I also think, well, I need to make sure I get some B vitamins. I got to get my vegetables. Okay, what fruits do I want to eat? Well, what's in season? So I'm using intelligence too, right? Just like you would at the table of abundance. If you knew that strawberries were in season on that table of abundance, you're gonna be like, bitch, let's go with the strawberries. I want to taste them right now because 6 months ago they were nasty, flavorless, whatever, right? Seek the pleasure. We live in this. Unless you are actively trying to restrict food, you don't. And then I guess my point would be to pay attention. Pay attention to your actual like mouth. What sounds good? If given that table of abundance, would you really overindulge forever? Or would the novelty wear off? Especially when it's just restocked. And what would it be like to live in this extreme abundance that we live in the United States and to feel safe and secure enough that you're not really tempted to overindulge because it feels like shit? How many of you love being super full? Anybody love it? The indigestion, the bloating, the gassiness, the pain. No one, right? So this is bringing me, any questions about this before we actually get into, I'm going to initiate our biology conversation that's going to get really difficult. Any questions about this? Okay, so when we get to the next assignment, I am going to post an assignment right now. So you guys need to pay attention. I'm posting a homework assignment. You are to just watch this video of me. Just watch it for Wednesday. So it's an hour and a half. Again, remember, I have no reading books. You guys don't have to do a whole lot of shit. But you know what I want you to do is read this lecture about the lecture you're going to listen to it. I'm about to give it to you on Wednesday. So having had this lecture watched before Wednesday will be really, really helpful. So I know this says homework 6. I don't know what homework this is. I just published it. Okay, do you guys see that? So the link goes to a lecture of me describing what we're going to talk about on Wednesday. And then all I need from you are the answers from, if you look at it, there's just like, you'll get the answers in the video. So while you're watching me lecture on this, you can answer all the questions. Does that make sense? Do it before Wednesday. Okay, I am going to erase this. Do you guys want to take a picture? There will be an exam at some point or a quiz in the near future where I'm going to ask you, what are these? So take a moment to take a picture and to remember these. Okay, you guys got it? We good? Okay, well, let's take the last 15 minutes to start talking about this next part. And again, I will go over this again on Wednesday. And I am recording this lecture, so I will post this lecture in the discussion. I'll let you know, or I'll post it in a email. I'll email it to everybody and say, hey, here's the YouTube of today's lecture. If you want to rewatch it, share it with anybody. Okay, so we are now going into, this is 2 parts. This is about metabolism, right? This is about fueling mechanisms. And then it ties back into where does food come in, right? How should we be eating when we understand this kind of biological and hormonal, it's really hormonal view of how we should be eating. Okay. So in I think it was 1997. No, it was actually early in the 1990s. Researchers discovered that body fat produces hormones. They did not know that prior to. We didn't have the technology. They knew there were relationships with insulin. They knew there was relationships with like pregnancy, right? That women who didn't have enough body fat, didn't ovulate, didn't have pregnant, and men couldn't have babies if they were too lean and emaciated, right? There was this understanding, but they really didn't necessarily fully know why, right? And so they discovered in the early 1990s that your fat is producing and seeping hormones. And by 1997, they started to give them names, and they started to understand a lot more about what these hormones, and I'm going to focus mainly on one, what it does. So we are going to talk about the hormone leptin. How many of you have heard about leptin and understand or know anything about leptin? Tell me, where were you introduced to it?
My ninth grade biology class.
Freaking love it. You were introduced early. Do you remember anything about it? Pop quiz in front of everybody.
This one I remember is that, like, when you feel hungry, it's because like the leptin's acting up or something.
Yeah, yes, and we're going to go over that. You're right. You hit the nail on the head. Good job. So leptin is a fat-derived hormone. It also is created in your brain. Your brain produces leptin. But predominantly, if you were to go get your blood leptin levels taken, it is a good indicator of your fat production of leptin. Your fat is the primary organ that produces leptin and other hormones, right? But I'm going to focus specifically on leptin. So when you think of that, you need to think of fat not as just this fuel reservoir, right? It's not just a gas tank. It actually has signals and messengers, and it actually does something, and it impacts the brain, and it actually messages with the thyroid and the pancreas and your ovaries and your gonads. It's doing a lot. In fact, you will find if you go look it up, endocrinologists that study it is the king of all hormones. It is regulating almost everything. Essentially, your body fat is producing this hormone that is sending signals to everything else around your survival. How much fat you have is a big deal. It matters. It freaking matters because that is your source of fuel when food is not available. Okay. So food is tied into this, and food actually matters because food is a stimulant of leptin. And when you don't have food, leptin changes. And when you do have food, leptin changes too. Okay. So this fat-derived hormone that comes from the organ, you have an organ of fat, and keep in mind too, that it's not just the whole fat, it is each cell of fat is in and of itself its own organ. Does that make sense? What's really cool about it is that when you have more fat cells, you get more of these hormones, and your fat cells can deplete and die. And it doesn't mean that it just means it can grow and it can retract. It can grow and retract. It's incredible. I think your skin can do that to some degree, right? But can your pancreas grow and retract? No, neither can your kidneys. Neither can like your ovaries, right? Your testes. They're not gonna they shouldn't, right? They should not have this growing and retracting capacity, but your fat is this incredible organ that can multiply, it can die back down, it can multiply again. And fat cells are different sizes. So when you look at the different sizes of fat cells and you look at the different types of mitochondria or the fueling engines that kind of burn the fuel reservoirs out of them, that changes how many of these hormones come out of it, right? And it just exploded. The research after in the mid 90s, this has exploded, and they have discovered quite a bit. we are going to be very specific in what I teach you guys. We're going to be specific to hunger and what it does to hunger rhythms and also metabolism. Okay, so there's all sorts of other areas. I'm just going to try to really simplify it. I'm going to be a little bit reductive, but I think it's good enough for this course that you're going to get what you need out of this conversation and be able to do something with it. Okay. So when we think of leptin, Leptin, you need to think it's a fat hormone. Okay. It does some cool shit. So we're going to put this aside and we're going to talk about our fueling mechanisms now. Let's just go right into our fueling mechanisms. So how many of you have had some type of physiology where you were taught about our fueling mechanisms? Okay, so some of you, this is going to be new, but it's pretty simple. I'm going to simplify this for you. You need to remember this. I will go over again on Wednesday and you're going to hear it again. Probably next week too. Okay. So when you think about the body's fueling mechanisms, I want you to think about first, blood sugar. Okay. So we have glucose. Glucose is sugar floating around our blood all the time, all the freaking time. And your blood sugar levels are very finely controlled. Why do you think? Does anybody know why? What is this regulated for? What is your blood sugar regulated for? What is its main purpose? It is regulated for the brain. It's your brain's food. Your blood sugar is finely regulated to make sure that your brain has access to fuel at all times. The brain doesn't like anything else. It doesn't. It prefers blood glucose. It prefers glucose. And not only that, but the blood-brain barrier will not allow other things to get up and in there, right? So you don't have cholesterol getting up in there, from my understanding. It's really finely regulated for the brain's needs, which is why each of us, it's very predictable what our blood sugar range should be. It should be within a very specific range. The reason, no matter what our size is, right? Take the smallest person in the class, take the largest person in this class, assuming you're all fasted, right? Your blood sugar should be relatively the same. Does that make sense? So each person, it shouldn't be wildly different depending on your size. It's not. You can have a 100 pounds more muscle and your blood sugar is still going to be the same as mine-ish. Make sense? That is because our brains are the same. Our brains are the same. It's finely tuned to be in this specific zone. So when we look at blood sugar and you get a blood glucose test, that's ideally in this tiny range. And we all have the same range for it to be in that we want it in. Okay. So when you think of blood sugar, think it's regulated for your brain. Now, your brain will share so your muscles can take it. So if you're sprinting, you're gonna use some of that blood sugar. You're gonna go through what's called glycolysis, which is the breakdown of glucose to be used as fuel. So blood sugar can be used. I'm using some of it right now as I'm pacing around, but predominantly my brain is using it. Okay. So the second source of fuel for the body anybody have a guess? It's related to blood sugar. It's called glycogen. Okay. Do you guys know what glycogen is? Okay. So it's sugar that is converted into a way of stored sugar. So think of it as stored sugar, but it's converted into something called glycogen. So think of glucose versus glycogen. So it's stored in the muscles and in your liver. So it is a kind of a storage of glucose, but it's not in that short form of sugar. It's like, again, it's made a tweak and then it gets stored in your liver and your muscles, okay? So glycogen is really cool because it can break down very quickly and it can actually make sure that this is sustained. So if I'm sprinting and my muscles need fast fuel and it's taking from that blood sugar, glycogen will get broken down from my muscles and my liver and it'll refeed my blood sugar. This is important. This glycogen, when we talk about fight or flight, your blood sugar goes up even if you're not eating because this breaks down and gets secreted into your bloodstream. Because your body is preparing for you to fight or run. And so it starts to break down. Just that central nervous system, perceived threat, triggers this cascade of events that says, glycogen, we need you to prepare for sprinting and fighting. So let's go ahead and break down and we're going to pump a bunch of sugar into your bloodstream. And so what happens when you're in stress is your blood sugar goes up. Now remember, your blood sugar is regulated for your brain, right? What happens if your blood sugar gets too high for the brain? You go into a coma and you die. It's finely tuned. It's finely regulated to make sure it doesn't get too high. It's toxic. Sugar is super toxic for the brain when it's too high. And this is really cool. What happens is there's systems involved, like your pancreas, and it says, holy shit, we got a lot of sugar and it's just sitting around. You got insulin that gets released. It says, hey, we'll convert that into a glycerol. Glycerol can't pass the blood-brain barrier and it protects the brain from dying of toxic sugar shock. So this is when you get higher cholesterol. It's incredible. So everything below the neck is working its butt off to make sure that you do not kill the brain with too much sugar from fight or flight because your glycogen is breaking down at a high rate. So glycogen is stored sugar in your liver and your muscles. And it's really quick and easy to access for sprinting reasons. So when you think of glycogen, I want you to think of fight or flight. This is like your stored fight or flight reserve of sugar because it's fast. It's easy to use. It's super fast. Okay. And it is very good. It is the optimum fuel for sprinting. Any fast movement, boom, your glycogen's like, it's my job. I'm going to do it. And the brain's like, thank God, because I don't want to be toxic. So get the fuel out there, use the fuel by fighting and fleeing. And then the pancreas is like, I'll fix whatever's left over. So we're going to make some glycerol to make sure the brain doesn't get too toxic. Okay, you follow me? So when we say blood sugar, I'm going to say, what's that for? Predominantly. Because it's for everything. We use it all the time, but it's your brain's food. So think my blood sugar is regulated to feed my brain. But my brain will share a little if it needs to, but the brain is relying on those glycogen reserves to support and reproduce the sugar it needs. Okay. Now notice there's no food involved in this conversation yet. Because we don't need food to do any of this. It happens without food. Your body can create sugar on its own. It's supposed to do that, especially when you're stressed. It's a positive thing. It's a beautiful thing, actually. Okay. It's why we're all still alive today, because we have glycogen in our liver and our muscles that breaks down to reproduce sugar that you tried to quit eating. You got it right here. Okay. So number 3, what's our third source of fuel for our bodies? This one's really easy. It's the most obvious one. Nope. Great answer. But I was meaning the body's fueling, not fuel from food. Take that, put it aside. So think of your body's fuel. It's already in your body right now. Yes, that would be down here. Is that ideal?
In the short term, yes, not so fat used for long term longevity, like your body turns off, so it's easy to break down protein in terms of sugar than just fat.
So
more for survival and long term.
you're talking about, so I'm gonna respond, you're correct and you're correct, but I'm gonna give you the response and you're gonna go, oh, okay. Protein is your last. Yeah, you don't, if you're using protein to survive, you're starving. Like you're literally starving. And your body will, and it's got byproduct, nitrogen byproduct. So ideally, you don't have to tap into your muscle reserves. It's not the best fuel source, but it will, it will do it, but it does it, it's not ideal. Right? So when you say muscle is a source, yeah, it is, but typically that's because these are no longer working. When these don't work anymore, you are correct. Your body will tap into muscle. Your muscle is a source of fuel. It will break down your muscle. Muscle is expendable. But it's not ideal. It's not it's not one of those really quick and easy and ideal like burning mechanisms. It's only really used in circumstances where the other ones are really inadequate. Does that make sense? The body would prefer other things and it does use other things. So what is missing on number 3? Body fat. Yeah. Now, so body fat is the most important fueling mechanism we have. And we'll talk more about it on Wednesday.